Microphone to Joy, and she will host the panel session. Let's welcome Joy.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you so much for being here. My name is Joy. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for TEL US. And today, I'm going to be the panel host. For the next panel, we're going to talk about how to cultivate the competencies and the skills for our future global citizens. So before I get started, I will quickly give you some background information about why we want to talk about this topic. And I know David probably has already done a great job talking about OECD Learning Framework 2030. Actually, this is the project launched, I think, this year. So the purpose is to help us to find out what are the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values and the competencies our future global citizens will need. And this is not like silo projects. This is a project cross countries. I believe about like 36 countries got involved. Definitely China, US, like big countries, like influential countries, and some middle-sized and small-sized countries are all included in this project. And also, I want to highlight a program and initiative within this OECD organization, which is called PISA. This is not a pizza we eat. Actually, this stands for Program for International Student Assessment. So it measures the skills and the knowledge the students need at the age of 15. And this year, because of the 2030 project, we have also included competency, global competencies into this PISA program. And before I get started, I would like to welcome the wonderful panelists to come to the stage, join me. So let's welcome Jeanette, the COO from ACT. Jeanette, will you please take the seat over there? And also, let's welcome Arne Duncan, who was the former U.S. Secretary of Education and now the managing partner for Emerson Collective. So one thing I want to highlight here, this is Arne's very first time to be in China. But guys, do you believe he will only spend less than 24 hours here? So he arrived last evening around 7-ish, and he's leaving 1:30 this afternoon. So he's only here for our conference, for our roundtable. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me. Give Arne another big round of applause for his support. Thank you, Arne. And next, we'd like to invite to the stage David, who is the VP from ETS. Welcome, David. So actually, we have some kind of problem with the slide. Instead of Hazel, who has already been on the stage twice, or maybe more than twice, so let's welcome our CFO from TEL, also who is the president for GLO Business Group, Julius. Welcome, Julius. So I'm going to start with a question. Actually, we probably have already talked about this during the presentations you guys have just done. I heard a little bit from Jenny's presentation. So I want you guys to highlight some of the key competencies you think are very important for our kids to help them to become the future global citizens. So should I start with whoever? Well, how about Arne? I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, David. You have the microphone, yeah.
Sure. So one of the things that I think I'd like to underscore, and I think others have mentioned this in their presentations as well, is the idea of cognitive agility, the idea that the world is changing so quickly, and so many things are changing technologically, politically, and we are so intertwined internationally in our economic well-being and our social well-being that being able to keep oneself aware of what's happening in the world around them, track how trends are progressing, and find the way that they can contribute to progress is an important part of that. And those are sort of characteristics that I attribute to this idea of cognitive agility and being able to understand when it's time to do something different, understand how to take on a new task, and to learn that new task, and to be able to be successful at it.
That's brilliant. So Arne, do you want to share a couple of things?
Sure. I walked in at the end of Janet's presentation. That word of agility hit me as well, and I think that's important. Let me just build upon that or add that a couple things. A second, again, I don't know if these are values or habits of mind, things to practice, for me would be empathy. And you can be technically extraordinarily competent, but if you can't think about how to help other people, if you're not able to walk in their shoes, if you're not comfortable in uncomfortable situations, I think that's going to limit the technical effectiveness of whatever skills you might have. Secondly, just being an entrepreneur. I think all of what we're saying is that the world's changing faster than any of us can begin to comprehend. It's just going to keep speeding up. So how are you constantly creating, recreating, creating for others, creating for yourself? And then the final one is, somehow I think we often have this myth that this is a straight line trajectory and we're all going to be successful. The truth is we're going to all, I'll speak for myself, we're going to fail multiple times. And for me, the goal is not to not fail. I was always very clear with my team at the Department of Education. It was a little bit confusing to them. We had so much work to do. We had so far to go. I wasn't trying to be perfect, because if we were trying to be perfect, we would go too slow. I wanted us to make the best decisions we could. I wanted to make those decisions based upon the right things for kids and move forward. And where we were successful, great. But where we made a mistake, let's own up to it, let's admit it, and let's learn and go from there. So being resilient, being willing to fail, being humble in that failure, being willing to adjust, those are just a couple other traits I would add to that agility theme.
That's beautiful. I think how to embrace failure is quite important. So we not only teach kids how to be successful, but when they fail, how can they learn from the failure? That's quite important as well. So Janet, since you're next to me, will you take
Sure. I love the agility theme, but I'm going to take a little different angle. And I think for me, part of it is curiosity. And that kind of fits into the agile world too. I mean, failing and being curious though about what caused that failure and learning from that failure and taking that information and going and deciding what to do next. But openness and curiosity for me are critically important. If we're closed-minded and aren't open to learning from others, aren't open to learning about ourselves, if we're not open to changing our minds, then it's going to be hard to navigate our society and our variety of cultures around the globe. And so openness, curiosity, to me, are critically important.
Julius?
Because we are in China, so we need to put in a special context. And I think one of the things very important is how to deal with the cross-boundary stuff, cross-culture stuff. And I think special for China talents, the first one we need to know is how to be Chinese. Sometimes it's a big question because we assume we are all Chinese, but sometimes we are not, because in the past few years we lost a lot of good things and good legacies in our history. So in the first place, how to be Chinese. In the second place, how to be international. Being international, it doesn't mean we just use 100% coming from the US and then we just apply to our life. That doesn't work. But we need to be kind of critical thinking. What is really matters for us, and what's really doing good to the life, and what can help us to open the mind to be more kind of transparent to the world. So how to be Chinese, how to be international, that's two questions for us.
Okay, great. So we have all talked about what are the important key competencies we each think about to prepare our future global citizens. So my next question is, we kind of come from different sides from education. We have people coming from education companies, assessment companies, also the former policy makers and doing investment, kind of like nonprofit work in this area. So my next question is, how all of us can work together to put an effective or efficient kind of curriculum or program together to help the young generation to get them ready for their future. Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I'll start, maybe go this way. But I mean, for me, sitting on a school board, I understand the importance of policy. And I think starting with policy would then create a baseline of expectation that would then drive curriculum, that would then drive how we assess what's being taught in the classroom. And so I think just as a starting point, if we could get some policies in place around the value of things like social emotional learning and in addition to those cognitive skills that we were talking about, or policy around in educational standards, including those kinds of SEL sorts of components. I think if we can get those kinds of things codified, then many of the other components in our educational system will come along and address that. So that's one thought.
Try and build on that and then maybe add a little bit. So there are all kinds of things that we can measure in education. There are things that I would call leading indicators and things that I would call lagging indicators. And I actually agree, whether it's test scores, whether it's graduation rates, whatever it might be, those are lagging indicators. Those are sort of after the fact. And if we care about those things, and we should, what are those things on the front end we can do that contribute to success long term? Where kids feel safe, where kids feel cared about, where teachers have trust, where those leading indicators are going the right way, these other things are going to follow. And so finding ways to have those conversations, for me it's not either or, it's not one's hard and one's soft, it's one builds upon the other, one leads the other, and I would argue one is the foundation for the other. And I would say where kids aren't safe, where they're not cared for, where they're not fed, when they're living in fear, it's hard to talk about going to college and AP biology and physics. And so building that foundation I think is hugely important. I think, Joy, the thing that I think all kids are looking for, my sense is all kids are looking for internationally is, why is school important for me? Why is it relevant? And the more the work is based around not just theory, but solving real world problems. And for better or worse, there's no shortage of real world problems out there for kids to be working on, and understanding why these things are important, and understanding not when they're our age, but at 13, 15, 18, they can actually contribute and make a real impact, whether it's internationally or in their local community, where kids feel that relevance. Then I think that sparks a curiosity and a lifelong love of learning that's so critically important going forward.
Beautiful. So, David, any thoughts?
So I completely agree with everything that you just said, and these are themes that I care deeply about as well, and I also think are very important. And one of the things that I think that we can really benefit from in advancing aspects of education is helping to encourage students to embrace these, but to do so in a way that really instills in them a value and appreciation and a love of education. Because I think a lot of our educational systems, despite their best intentions, aren't embraced by students. They don't see it as a place to grow, or a place to enjoy, or a place to really experience the joy of learning, and a lot of times initially it can be difficult for them to adjust. And so I think that being able to change some aspects of our educational system in ways that I talked about previously with elements of the classroom curriculum and the manner of teaching, so that it's more interactive, more exploratory, more flexible, less a matter of the teacher knowing something and getting the student to know the same thing, and more a matter of exploring the world together. I think those kinds of approaches to approaching teaching differently can help students both self-direct to the kinds of problems that they care most about, learn the kinds of things they still need to learn, but do so in a way where they have more autonomy, more control, more sense of agency in their own education and in how they interact in the world around them. And I think if we can instill some of those early on, we can overcome some of those obstacles to really embracing education and really embracing their role in the broader community.
Julius?
Yeah, exactly. I also agree with all the points you have mentioned just now. That's easy, right? But at the same time, I think for Chinese students, one thing we need to pay so much attention is how to let them be more inclusive. Which means, in the past, in our classrooms, in general, the teacher want to control the classroom. The teacher want to give the knowledge in their mind to their mind. And they want to encourage they compete with each other. So peer pressure become a very important way for the schools and the teachers to make things work. At least for myself, every day we have my parents have told me, hey, someone from the other friends' kids is doing so good. Then I ask, who is that kid? I'm number one in my city already. Who is the kid? But the kid is always there. So too much competition sometimes makes people, they are too arrogant. We wish the kids sometimes can, don't compete for the number one, but compete for yourself. Which means you need to recognize and value the other people's kind of good advantages and good skills. Everyone is doing so good. We need to be very, very kind of transparent to that. I also learned from some of the knowledge from the content leaders, the book which was written by professors in UK, which means we need to evaluate every person. They are separate, they are independent. They have their own kind of the good things and bad things. What we need to do is being transparent, be open, be equal to everyone. I think that is something we're missing in Chinese classrooms. So especially for the kids who want to be international, that's something we need to pay special attention to that.
That's great. Actually, I do have like two ideas from my side to chip in. So I think to help the kids to become a global citizen in an effective, efficient way is first we need to picture or imagine what kind of life they will be having down the road. And starting from that point, we need to think about what really matters. And then we put those things into the curriculum and into the program. This is number one. Number two is I think all of us here, we work in the field related to education. We do hope we can work closely together so everybody will be on the same page, and more importantly, everybody will speak the same common language. I think that's why OECD is launching this kind of program, so everybody chipping their ideas about how to create a standards, well, cross countries, like global standards, so we will work on the same project and we will fight for the same thing, we set up a same goal. So that's my idea. So moving to next question, actually I know ETS, ACT, you guys are doing great job in assessment side. So we know how to assess knowledge, skills for sure for many, many years. So global competency is something quite new. So how do you guys think about the best way to assess the competencies? You want to take the question?
It's great. Social emotional learning, I'll start with that. Some of those competencies around conscientiousness, agreeableness, openness, empathy, those sorts of things. There are ways to measure those competencies. They're not fixed traits in students. They're attributes that can be developed, and so finding ways to measure those, but then not just measure them, but then start to work with students on what their attributes look like to help them develop those competencies. I think that's something that's really important. It's not just the measurement piece of it, it's what you do with that information to help the student develop and grow. And I think focusing on those toolkits for educators, for teachers, I think is going to be critically important. And we've talked a lot about students and what they need to be good, strong global citizens and how they can be open and all those sorts of things. But I think we need to make sure that we're paying attention to teachers in all of this so that they're getting the training and the development so that they're equipped to help lead our students, maybe not in that rote way, but in different forms of learning. So I think it is possible to measure some of those social emotional learning skills, but I think the real key then is how teachers can work with those students to help develop those skills.
David?
Yeah, I would echo some of those same kinds of comments. I think this is really insightful that the core parts of measurement aren't measurement alone. You know, measurement by itself isn't helpful to education unless we have a corresponding set of educational interventions that we can pair with it. So, you know, in my experience, anything that we can fundamentally define that is of interest of, and if we can identify ways we can see it in the natural world around us, we can also identify ways to test it in more controlled ways and to come up with measures of it. And so I think that even for some of these elusive constructs, there are mechanisms we can use to be able to get an understanding of where students stand on some of these socio-emotional, non-cognitive kinds of skills. Yeah. But I think we also need to pair it with an appropriate educational approach to how do we nurture these, where do we want them to be, right? Because one of the part of this is goal setting for where we want our students to develop towards. And, you know, to have the measure without having those is almost like, you can imagine going to a doctor's office and, you know, they take your temperature and they tell you you have a fever and you say, what are you going to do about it? Like, nothing, goodbye. You know, you have to have some way to help people progress and move towards the kind of citizens you'd like to have. And so I look forward to seeing a closer relationship between educational systems and assessment systems, because they're often treated as very separate entities. And so I'd really love to see them blended to the point where it's almost difficult to find a distinguishing point between education and assessment.
Actually, that's a very good point. That's why Tao is working with you guys from the education companies angle, try to together understand how we can put assessment together. So Julius, coming from that angle, do you have anything to add here? What are your expectations regarding to the competency assessment?
Yeah, exactly. I think last year I went to ETS for the first time, the very beautiful campus with some deers over there. And this year I went to New York to see the ACT peoples there. You know, the slides of ACT slides, they drives me a lot because that's the first time for understanding what is a company, how can a company be so destructive in the past few, maybe 20 or 30 years. And one slide there over there is very important is they have navigation, assessment, and learning. 3 circles. And I saw the same slides when ETS CEO come to visit us. So I think that's very important ways we need to measure all of things together. So we need to really understand who is our student and what are some key competencies they have. So assessment will be very important. And besides assessment, we also need to know what's the best way to teach them. You know, I also have a conversation with someone from Micro Hill. They have a system called Alex. So they have a theory called knowledge space theory. In that series, they also do so much things there, how to understand what does knowledge mean. So I think learning will become more self-adaptive, will more be individualized to everyone. And besides we have assessment and learnings, navigation is even more important. Today, if you ask China parents, hey, what is your kids planning in coming 1 or 2 years or 5 or 10 years? They have no idea. Whether you need to send your kids abroad, I have no idea. I wish, but I don't know what's the detailed plan for me. I don't know what really works for me or not. So navigation becomes very important stuff. So we not only give them how much score you have, we need to give them, hey, in the coming through 5 years, there's a plan. Maybe not the best plan, but kind of good recommendations to them. So when we consider navigations, assessments, and learnings, we need to bear in mind what does global competency means. And we need to put them in a more international context to let people feel, hey, besides the echo effects, the people around you, actually you need to open your windows to more places and more culture and more geography, more features. Someone, when they decide to send their kids to be more international, they think, I just need to send my kids to US for camping or even study abroad. That means international, maybe not. Because besides China, besides US, we still have a huge geography, even bigger geography over there. So I think we are still in the very beginning of how to train the international talents from China. But we are so lucky and so honored to have cooperation with ACT, ETS, and some other very famous players in the US. We wish working together we can make things work.
So Arne, you have a few words or thoughts to share with us, your expectation about how competency should be measured.
You guys have got me thinking. This is a really fascinating conversation. I love the perspective from China and really trying to listen and understand that. I'll just share, Joy, something I worry about, and I was just trying to speak honestly. The assessment part, I think over time, I don't say it's easy, but it's easier, and we can figure out how to assess and actually are assessing lots of these things. I think the larger question, Joy, for us, and I just, again, speak for myself in the United States, is sort of what do we value? And do we truly value these global competencies? And I guess my concern, my concern right now in the United States is, are we actually open to other perspectives? Are we open to listen? And let me go further. I think schools have a unique obligation to open kids' minds, as you talked about, and open them to the world. Because I think everything right now, or so much where we live, our social media, what we pay attention to, everything narrows us and makes it harder to bridge gaps. And I think it's hard to learn to bridge those gaps as adults. I think the best time to learn to bridge those gaps is when you're young and doing some things together. So I think that's it's an honest conversation each country has to have. And my personal fear is if those habits of mine aren't learned when kids are young and teens, those are very hard to acquire once you're grown.
That's great sharing as well. We do have a couple of minutes, so my last question would be, I'm a mom. I know there are so many parents sitting down there, especially in China, we have a lot of parents under a lot of pressure. How can I give the kids better future? So do you guys have some ideas, thoughts you want to share with parents in China? You can think a bit. Maybe David, you can start.
I'll jump right in, if only to commiserate. And I'm a parent as well. I have 2 children who are in their mid-teens now. And throughout their development, I too have struggled with this question of what's my job and what's my role as a parent? How do I support them best? And what I found as a challenge for me personally is trying to strike a balance between being demanding and supportive, to have high expectations, but to give them the support they need to achieve them on their own in many respects, because they have to achieve this, they have to learn this, they have to do this. And so I view myself as a coach. You know, I try to teach them the point of the game, what we want to do, what we want to achieve, and then I'm there for them when they succeed, and I'm there for them when they fail. Nice. And then I also, through a bit of effort on my part, frankly, learn to trust them and to let them lead parts of their education.
Great. Being a coach for your parents, that's a great idea. Yeah. Jen, you ready?
I might just add something. I feel, again, I'm speaking very personally about some of my experiences with my own students, my own kids, but also the role I have on our school board. And there are so many parents in my community that are engaged, that have a lot of experience about how to navigate the educational system, how to apply to college, how to get the right courses, even as early as in preschool. That they know that preschool is important, and so they have their children enroll in that. But in my community, there's so many parents who don't have those experiences, who don't know that preschool is really important, or certain courses in junior high or high school are important. And so one of the struggles that we have is trying to find ways of coaching those parents and engaging them in ways that they can begin being that coach for their own students, because we have so many parents who don't know how to do that. And so that's one of the things I was just thinking about, David, as you were talking, is how to find ways of engaging parents, giving them the information that they need, helping to bring them along so that they can be their children's best advocates and helping their children succeed.
Arne?
Yeah, this is all very personal, so try and what my wife and I try and do, and we do it very, very imperfectly, is at dinner time, we're sort of talking through stuff. I try and ask two questions, sort of, what questions did you ask today? And that we want asking questions and not just sitting there and just, you know, receiving knowledge, absorbing knowledge. And then the other different question, maybe a little different, is what do you fail at today? And just trying to give our kids, like, if our kids aren't failing at stuff, then they're not actually stretching themselves. And so it's sort of a counterintuitive, but I want my kids failing. And so where are you struggling? Where are you having a hard time? And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
That's great. Actually, I do the same practice with my little one. When I every night put him to sleep, I ask him questions like, what is the happiest moment of the day? So try to make, he's only 8, so I try to make him to kind of wrap up his day in a positive way, and then think about how can he do better tomorrow. So something we are doing like similar. So Julius?
Yes. You know, China's reform has only started 40 years ago. So what you see today actually only happened in the past 20 years. I think when I came to Beijing in the year 2000, I think the 4th ring actually is still farmers' land. So we change a lot in economy, but which lead to more pressure to the parents and to the society. So most of the parents wish education become one of the only way their kids can move far in the society, especially the competition is more and more. So we have so-called tiger mothers, not only in US but also in our country a lot. So I think one suggestion we want to give to parents is actually compared to you give pressure to your kids, give more pressure to yourself. Make yourself stronger. Make yourself stronger means in the first place you need to make yourself with more kind of comprehensive knowledges, not only look into some of the kind of good role model in the society, but also be more transparent to the whole industry, to the whole cultures, not only for one success. To try to establish different success evaluators, not only one KPI driven. Secondly is, I think, learn to be a human. Sometimes, you know, I think when my son was very young, sometimes I'm very serious to him. I say, hey guys, finish this work, finish that work. He did. He's very smart, but he didn't feel happy. Right. So he has accomplished a lot of scores and bring some medals back, but he's not happy. So we parents need to learn how to be a human, how to have temperature, how to really learn how to be a parent. I think compared to the parents in the US, you have a lot of good kind of habits, like the dinner talk and some other things. I personally spent 3 years in Seattle. So my son, even today, he cherished the 6 months life in Seattle. So I wish maybe one thing we should learn is sometimes get rid of so-called pressure, get rid of so-called scores, be a human and be good to your kids and give more pressure to yourself, make yourself stronger.
I think we pretty much ran out of time, so we have to wrap up here. And I do think parents, educators, policymakers, and education companies, all of us are very important key stakeholders will help the kids to develop for their future. And I think this goes a little bit beyond how to become a global citizen, but how to become a happy person till the end. So we really want to help them to find out who they are, who they want to be, and I think this is really our responsibilities to make sure this will happen through our support and our help. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a great roundtable. Thank you so much. Please give a big round of applause to all the panelists on the stage. Thank you.